Hi everyone. I had some technical difficulties with the first video that I did of this wash with the pumpkin composition. So I'm remaking it. You can see I have already completed one pumpkin. So before you do this, I want to remind you, you need to have the pumpkin composition in place on the big paper with the borders, one pumpkin being bigger and lower in the page, second one being higher in the page. It could be bigger or smaller than the first one. But the main idea is with that balanced composition, right? So don't forget that. When you're working, you have the choice of doing a variegated wash like I've used here or a graded wash. And you're going to do them separately. You want to let one rest and dry before you do the second one. And you want to do that to both of them before you do the ground and the sky. So you don't want to try to do the whole thing at once because the colors will just all run together and you'll have difficulties, all right? When I painted this one, I also painted the stem of the second pumpkin because it wasn't connected to it anywhere and I wouldn't have to worry about them running together. But notice I didn't paint the stem of the first pumpkin because I didn't want those colors to run with these colors. I'll paint that at the same time as I paint this one. So you get to choose whether you do a variegated wash or a graded wash. I've already got my pigments set up and pretty ready to go. They've dried a little bit in the time that I let this rest and waited for the video to come live again. I just want to just do some real quick reminders for you. When you're doing this, you should have a couple different water containers so that you can clean your brush in one and pick up clean water in the other. The clean water is to pick up water to saturate the colors so that you can pick them up from the tray and move them to the paper. The second one is to clean your brush out. Also, the clean water is to saturate your paper too, so that the colors, when you pick them up here, move around more freely to create that wash, right? So you want to make sure that it's all set up, that you've got all the materials and you're ready to go. Now, like I said, my pigments have dried a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and rehydrate them. This is for my clean water. That I'll use for my cleaning my brush. So I want to make sure my brush is clean first, right? Clean it out. I have a rag here that I can tap it out to see that it's clean and also take a little extra water out. So I get clean up water on my brush. I make sure that my pigment is all set and ready to go and that I've got enough. If I don't have enough, I can always make it, but it's best to have it before you need it. So I'm going to add a little bit more water to my tray of colors. I'm going to saturate the color a little bit more, like we did in the previous practice work, right? You want to make sure that it's ready to go. Drag it across the rim of the container to unload it. Remember, you're creating kind of a paste in the tray of color here, and then you're downloading it here where you can add more water to it, or you can pick it up, or you can mix colors together on this tray, not here. That's what the lid is for mixing and for downloading so that you can move it freely and easily for washes. So I'm dragging off the excess, I'm tapping out the extra, I'm going to clean out my brush. Now I'm ready to put clean water on my pumpkin. I've got my pigments all set and ready to go. So when I do this, I want to go right up to my contours of my previous pumpkin, make sure it's dry, and I don't want to go over those lines, otherwise they'll run into that pumpkin and damage it, okay? So my first step is just go around the contours of the pumpkin, the outer edges at this point, and then we'll do the inner edges and fill it in with water. That water, remember, is the vehicle. It moves the pigment around the surface and does the wash. It evenly spreads it out, and when it's that way, you won't see brush strokes, but in case you do, if you pull your brush going the direction of your contours on the inside, it will enhance those contours if your brush strokes do happen to show. And you can leave white areas for highlights and stuff like that by just not putting water there and then not putting pigment there too. I'm not going to do that on this one, but I have done it in my previous examples in class. All right, my paper is all set with pigment or water, and I can tell by looking at it from a different angle and seeing that it's shiny. And that's one way for you to check too. I'm going to tap out a little of that water because I don't want to have too much as I pick up my pigment. Now I'm going to do I'm going to do a graded wash, and I'm going to work from the bottom upward, so it's darker blue and goes to a lighter blue as it transitions upward. So I just keep loading my brush up. Remember when we did a graded wash, we went side to side. We don't want to do that with the pumpkin because we want to enhance its curvature, its roundness, the fact that it's three-dimensional. And if we went side to side, the wash would flatten it out. And that's another good reason why you don't want to do a graded or a flat wash on this, because that too will wash it out. So I've got pigment just about everywhere. I need to put it right here inside these segments too, just right along that pumpkin. Now, because I've got blue in the stem, there's not going to be a lot of contrast if this all merges together a lot. Now I tilt it and turn it to make it do what I want it to do, and that's part of the process, right? As a matter of fact, if you brush a lot, you're going to damage the oil pastel lines by over brushing, and you might even damage the paper's surface by brushing a lot. So what you want to do instead is manipulate it by turning your paper different directions and making it flow where you want it to go, and that's what where it makes its graded wash. So I'm going to manipulate it so that it flows from there to down here, so that it's darker and bluer here than it is up there. I can make it go into the sides a little bit by going side to side, back and forth, right? So there are lots of different things that I can do to make it, force it to go back that way or force it to go back downward. Now I have to pay attention. If I'm not really watching it, and if this is still wet, I'm going to mess this up too, right? So this needs to be dry before you paint that. Please don't paint the sky and the ground when this is wet either. But I want to still keep paying attention when I'm tilting and turning so it doesn't run outside of my shape onto the negative space. So it's a matter of really looking everywhere and paying attention to what every part of the wet pigment is doing and where it's going as you're twisting and turning it and making it go where you want it to go. Now, oops, and speaking of the devil, look what just happened to me right there. It ran outside of the pumpkin. So here's a tip. Have a clean, dry brush available, or a tissue or a paper towel that you can dab at that and pick it up so it doesn't show up. As long as it happens and you notice it while it's still wet, you can control for it. Now, I like to manipulate the paper beyond twisting and turning. I can cup the paper like this so that it curves downward, or I can cup it this way so it curves outward. If I curve it outward, the watercolor is going to go this way. If I cup it inward like this, they're going to go back in toward the center. Or I can just tilt it, right? So there are lots of things I can do to make it do what I want it to do. And I'm expecting that of you too. Now, I see that it's a little bit light and unsatisfying in this area here. So I'm just going to do a little nursing of it. I'm just going to force it to go into these areas just a little bit. Right up to that line right there. And just a little right along that edge, because that would be the other side of it, right? And it would be coming back toward us a little bit. Now, to control for that, so it looks more like the front side, I can do some mopping there with a drier, clean brush. I can mop up some of that so it looks like this top edge here does, there too. And I can force it to come down this way a little bit more, even with some brushing, okay? So there are lots of things you can do to make it do what you want it to do. Now, I could have done a variegated wash in here too with the brown or another color too. Remember, you're using colors in a symbolic or expressive way, not in a realistic way. But I like to use darker colors underneath so it helps to enhance that curvature. So since I'm only using one color, I'm just going to use a more saturated version or purer version of the color at the bottom and lighter at the top. That'll enhance its getting more light here and less light here, right? If I want to, I can pick up some of that color and clean it out. I can move it over. I can do a lot of things with that excess watercolor as I'm manipulating it. All right, so that's this. The next step is the negative space at the top and at the bottom for the sky and the ground. This needs to rest and dry first. Oh, let's not forget the stem, right? I'm going to put the brown into the stem so it contrasts a little bit more with the blue. So a little bit of pure clean water there, and then a little bit of the brown. Don't forget to do that second stem, right? And I could do some blue into that brown too. I can come back in with more pure brown and put it in a few places so it's darker if I get some. So don't forget to do that secondary stem, okay? And don't forget, you can babysit this as long as you want to make it do what you want to do. Once you're done, you want to put it in a safe place so nobody gets into it, nobody picks it up, moves it around, so a cat doesn't step on it and walk across it and damage it. So it's on you to keep it in good shape. So put it in a place where it's safe. Clean up your work, clean off your palette lid. Remember, if you know you're going to use those colors again, you don't need to clean it up. Just let it dry, and you can rehydrate them with water, and they're still workable. All right? So now that you know what to do, that's what we did in class on Thursday and Friday with the watercolors on the composition. Have a nice weekend, everyone.